Timothy Patrick McCarthy is an award-winning scholar of the history of social movements who teaches at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Dr. McCarthy is here today to talk with us a little bit more about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his legacy. Welcome, Tim. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Francesca. Great to be here.
Well, first of all, what do you think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what would he say about the recent events and race relations in the United States today?
Well, I think if Dr. King were to come back to us today, he'd be of two minds. On the one hand, he would look at the unbelievable amount of progress that's been made, particularly for the black middle class. He would see a black president. He would see his good friend and comrade John Lewis in the U.S. Congress, and he would be thrilled at the amount of progress that's been made in the 50 or 60 years since the black freedom struggle. On the other hand, I think he would look at what's going on in the aftermath of Ferguson and Staten Island with the ongoing battles over racism and white supremacy in the United States, of economic inequality, of police brutality. And I think he would be dismayed that we have not made much progress on those issues. And in fact, in recent years have gone backwards and are moving in the wrong direction.
Well, Tim, what do you think that the civil rights movement did right then? And what is or isn't being done today that is working in terms of advancing equality?
Well, I think one thing the civil rights movement did was it was relentless in its local organizing. I think one of the things that we think about when we look back at history is we think about this black freedom struggle or this civil rights movement as a fully formed national movement that had global implications. But when in reality, the civil rights movement was, and always was, a series of local organizing battles on the ground in places like Albany, Georgia, and Birmingham, Alabama, and Montgomery, and Selma, and all of these different places where different battles for different kinds of rights against this sort of infrastructure of white supremacy and racist violence. That organizing that took place on the local level was always at the heart and soul of the movement itself. And so I think today, when we think about a national movement in the wake of Ferguson and Staten Island, the Black Lives Matter movement, I think that we will see similar kinds of local organizing strategies that are linked up to a national call for transformation.
Well, one of the things that is in theaters right now is Selma, the movie about Dr. King's legacy, and it's been nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture. Is this movie, do you think, a good tool or a way of educating the current population about King's legacy and history, and why or why not?
Well, there's no question that the film is a powerful film, and notwithstanding the recent snubs that it got for direction and acting at the Oscars, it is up for Best Picture. And this film has ignited, I think, a national debate, or reignited a national debate about some really important things. The first thing that the film depicts is a movement of the people. It is much more of a grassroots representation of the civil rights movement and the black freedom struggle than it is a biopic specifically about the greatness of Martin Luther King, as great as he was. So this is a movement about the people and the grassroots strategies that brought about that great social change. There's also a debate going on that I think this film has helped to reignite, which is who is responsible for the great transformation and changes of the civil rights movement and the black freedom struggle. There's a huge national debate right now about the representation of LBJ, of Lyndon Johnson, in the film. And this is a heated debate that has been going on since the civil rights movement, the relationship between King and LBJ, who was responsible for the changes that took place during the 1960s, and then ultimately who fueled the movement. Where did that energy come from? And that energy was always coming from and deriving principally from the people, and the film depicts that in a powerful and wonderful way.
Certainly a movie about a biopic. Last question, Tim, take me back to the civil rights movement. Remind us of what Dr. King was really fighting against, the kind of Jim Crow laws and forms of oppression that did exist, that aren't here today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that he was struggling for black freedom, not just for particular kinds of civil rights for black people. And that meant dismantling white supremacy and segregation within institutions like schools, like voting rights, like public accommodations and businesses. But Martin Luther King's legacy is something bigger than that, even bigger than those really important things that he was fighting for and that the movement was fighting for. He was also fighting fighting increasingly against economic inequality and economic divisions in the society. He was, late in his life, a very outspoken critic of the Vietnam War and of the escalating violence that came from war. And so this was a man and a movement as well, but in particular, Martin Luther King was someone who was fighting against all forms of inequalities for a broad-based and deeply held view of human rights for all people, trying to dismantle structures of segregation and of prejudice, but also trying to flatten out the kinds of inequalities that are still very much pervasive in American society.
All right, Dr. Timothy Patrick McCarthy, joining us from Sarasota, Florida. That's all we have time for, but thank you so much for talking to us about Dr. King and his legacy today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And you're watching Arise News Weekend.
Say goodbye to Hollywood. You say goodbye to him?
Oh, yeah, goodbye, Tim. No, I mean, how, you want me to start over and just say that? Okay. Oh, I can say goodbye. Okay. Hi, Tim. Bye, Tim. Anyway, no, we're done. I guess he was just saying that I could say bye to you.
Oh, okay.
What are you doing in Florida?
Oh, I'm down here finishing up my play. I'm at my parents' place.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I saw that you said it was going to be staged at the Loeb in April, I think?
Yeah, April 28th.
That is so awesome. I'm so happy for you. I'm going to have to come and check it out. We're going to have lunch again.
Yes, of course.
All right, sweetheart. Well, listen, I got to go and, carry on. But the question I didn't get to ask you, though, is who is the Dr. King of today? Is there anybody out there?
I think that given the way that our media culture is so small d democratic these days, I don't know if we're going to see a king. I don't think any movement moving forward is going to have one figure that rises above the rest of the movement. I think that you're seeing in the Black Lives Matter movement and in Occupy and in so many of these other movements, much more of a democratization of leadership.
Yeah.
So the leadership
It's
kind
more
of
spread out.
Grassroots level, and one individual exceptional person isn't kind of plucked out for the purposes of visibility and representation.
Yeah.
I actually think that we need to resist the tendency to find one leader or the leader. As important as Dr. King was, there were so many other people who made that movement happen. And I think that that's true today. And the more we focus on the organizing and the strategies and the goals of the movement rather than trying to find the next King or the next Malcolm X, I think we're better off.
All right. That's awesome. I'm sorry we didn't get that one on tape. But anyway, all right. Thank you, Lovey. Have a good time. I'll see you soon.
Bye, dear.
Take care. Bye, honey.